Okay, so while you're locked up, you have a fiance on the outside. But then at one point, she starts to secretly record your phone calls.
That's right.
Talk about what happened.
Well, she did something really stupid. Recorded my phone calls for the defense on one of the cases I testified in. And she did it for money.
Why would she do that?
For money.
Okay, so the mob was actually paying her to record these phone calls. And this is a big violation, which could have actually gotten you kicked out of the witness protection program.
That's right. It almost did, actually.
Okay. And how did you end up staying in the program eventually?
Yeah, eventually they decided not to breach my agreement and keep me in the program.
Well, you provided information about 6 unsolved murders that were actually committed by your fiance's brother and associates.
That's not true.
Okay, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I know who you're talking about. That's not all true.
Okay, can you explain then?
They had already known the crimes. I tried to get her brother out of jail originally. He was in jail he was innocent on a drug charge for 15 to life that he was actually innocent of. They already knew the information. It was a cousin of theirs, Michael Salone, who actually led to the cases against our brother. Our brother wound up cooperating anyways.
Okay, so you're waiting in jail, you agree to cooperate, but you haven't taken the stand yet. And then in 1998, you testify in your first court case. And this was against Lucchese associate Michael Baldy Mike Spinelli and his brother Robert Spinelli.
Right.
So did you know both these guys, Baldy Mike and Robert?
Yeah, of course I did, yeah.
Okay, so it's one thing to meet with law enforcement and give some statements and sign some documents, but actually walking into a courtroom, taking the stand, pointing your finger and say, yes, this person did this crime and so forth, because this was a serious case. I guess the 2 brothers were charged with trying to kill the sister of Lucchese informant Peter Chiodo, right?
Right.
So describe actually walking into that courtroom, and like you said, every fiber of your being is against cooperating, but now you're taking the stand publicly and actually cooperating against people that you know.
It was a very, very tough thing to do. You know, it's, you walk in that courtroom and everybody's looking at you. You can hear a pin drop. And at some point you're saying to yourself, what the fuck am I doing here? You know, sometimes you want to not even be alive, you know? So it's that I don't pride myself on that. And it's not a good feeling to testify against anybody. But again, my focus was my dad. That's it. My father and my family. That's it. That's all that mattered.
So when you take the stand, was Baldy Mike and Robert Spinelli actually sitting in the courtroom looking at you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and everybody else, the jury, the judge, people in the stands, the marshals, everybody's looking at you. Like I said, the spotlight's on you.
Right, but you're only testifying against 2 people. Everyone else is just there because they're doing their job. So what was it like to make eye contact with your former friends who you're now testifying against?
Like I said, it was a terrible feeling, you know, that never planned to do, never prided myself on doing, and never want to do again. So to be honest with you, no, I never thought I would be in that position. Never, ever in my life did I ever think I would be in that position.
After you took the stand and ultimately it went to the jury, were they both found guilty?
Yeah, they were found guilty.
So, knowing that you contributed to two people being found guilty, how did you feel afterwards?
Well, like I said, I didn't feel anything really because they had a choice too. They had choices to make. They could have pled guilty. They could have cooperated themselves. I think eventually Robert Spinelli did go on to cooperate after that case. But they could have made choices just like I did. They could have sat down with the government. They could have cooperated. So I look at it and say, well, if that's the choice they made, that's the consequence. So I didn't feel either way.
So you actually testified in other cases as well, one of which was Tony Franzese, whose real name is actually Tony Gonzalez, who had killed a cop. So talk about that situation.
So Tony Gonzalez, a.k.a. Tony Franzese, was a cousin. He started out as a cousin of my ex-fiance's cousin, and then became the uncle.
Okay. And what did you actually testify on?
Well, at the time, my fiance's father was working on a construction site, and they found him dead. And the family believed that he was killed, that he didn't fall through a hole. They felt that he was killed. So I wanted to get even for him. I was putting together a hit team to take out somebody in the Gambino family, an associate of the Gambino family, because it was ran by the Gambinos. And then Tony came to me and wanted to be part of my hit team and was telling me how capable he was, that he killed this cop years ago. And he was trying to prove to me that he's capable of coming on, and helping me. I don't know why he was telling me. He was just trying to impress me. He just told me the guy's name, how he did it, the whole thing. So that's how I learned about it.
Well, like Michael Franzese, he's a regular on my show. And his father is Sonny Franzese, who was an underboss at one point. And the one thing that Michael had said multiple times on my show was that when it came to the mafia and murders, at the point that you do it, you never talk about it again. So you can go on a hit with someone, and the next day you could talk about that guy on the hit, and he'll say, I have no idea what you're talking about. Was that the case in general? And why were guys like Tony Gonzalez bragging about people they killed, especially a cop?
Well, first off, Tony Gonzalez was not in the Mafia. He was not even associated with the mob. So he could tell whoever he wants about it. What you're talking about is somebody's in the mob. Yeah, you're not supposed to, Michael Franzese's right. You're not supposed to discuss another murder with anybody. But that's not always the case. A lot of guys talk and trade notes, and that it happens all the time. Guys do talk about murders. Guys do brag about murders, and they talk about work and pieces of work they've been on and stuff like that. There's a lot of guys who brag about it that are in the mob.
Well, ultimately, Tony Gonzalez got convicted for the killing of the NYPD cop. And they were saying that Rudy Giuliani actually wanted to personally thank you for helping out on the case. Did that ever happen?
No, he never did. That's what I was told. I was told that this cop murder has been unsolved for the past 20 years. It was the only unsolved cop murder in New York City. And they were very ecstatic about it. And Giuliani, at that time, was the head of the police and wanted to come down to personally thank me for helping solve the case.
Well, they say that your testimony against the mob and drug dealers resulted in more than 70 convictions. Does that sound right, or does that number sound inflated?
I didn't take a count myself. They say 70, they say more than 70. I really can't tell you. I can't give you a number.
Well, they also say that the former FBI director, James Comey, actually said that your cooperation really helped establish his reputation and allowed him to kind of move up the ranks.
Okay, I think it's a stretch, but okay. Should I say thank you, or I don't know what to say to that.
When it was all said and done, after you took the stand multiple times, after you gave the information that you gave, like some of the people who you cooperated against were potentially involved in the hit on your father, but when you look at 70 people, I would assume that the majority of them really had nothing to do with putting a hit on your father and really had no animosity towards you, didn't do anything to you directly. How did you ultimately live, with yourself in terms of what you did and putting people behind bars? And look, I understand they chose their life and they took, they're getting the repercussions based on their decisions. But in terms of your role with people you didn't have any beef with, how did you take that at the end of the day?
Okay, so when you cooperate, you go into an agreement with the real mafia. The real mob is the government. That's the real mob.
Right.
Okay, and you learn real quick who the real mob is. When you decide to cooperate, you might try to go in there and pick and choose and just say, I'm going to talk about this guy and not talk about that guy. That's not how it works. They usually know the answers before they ask you the questions. Okay, so let's get that straight. There's more rats on the street than there is in the program. So they already know the answers before they ask you. They want to see if you're lying. You have to go in there, you have to tell everything that you did and who you did it with. So you're under an agreement. You're under your cooperation agreement. I give the information. If the agent's able to go out and convict 100 people, it's not like I came in and said, I have 100 people to give up. I don't even know what information I have. It's not my job. It's not my job to put cases together. My job was to tell the truth and to abide by my agreement. So, again, focusing on my family was protected. That was my main concern. Now I'm in an agreement. I pled guilty to life. My agreement was to tell the truth. I told the truth. I answered all the questions truthfully. That's it. If the agents were able to make 100 people, cases out of 100 people, then they did a good job. If they were able to convict one person, they did what they could. That's not it's not in my control. I don't have any control over that.
Before you started cooperating, what were the charges that you pled guilty to exactly?
I pled guilty to RICO murder, 2 RICO murders, and I think it was 9 or 11 conspiracy to murders. Some people died and some people didn't die. Doesn't make it okay either way.